the issues going on with Arizona basketball. Let's get started on how we can correct them as a team right here. Let's get started here on Locked On Wildcats.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it Locked On Wildcats. I'm your host, Mike Luke. All right, now, we don't want to be Chicken Little and the sky is falling here because the sky is not falling. Arizona basketball is still very, very good, as we know, as everybody knows out there. But there are obviously some issues that this team does need to address. First, this, while a very good team, and again, a commendable job by Tommy Lloyd and what he's been able to do out here, the one thing about this squad is this is a team that, let's just be honest here, this is a team that lacks athleticism. Not only do they lack athleticism, they lack the ability for guys to be able to take somebody off the dribble. That's why I think Kylan Boswell is kind of such an anomaly out there, because you watch Kylan Boswell and you're like, whoa, this guy can do some things out there. This guy can do some things off the dribble. And I think that's where I think he's fascinating. Now, where it does get interesting is, what do you do about it? Because again, Tommy Lloyd has shown at Arizona that, he can recruit, but a lot of these guys that he's recruiting are role players. And when you watch these teams, these are role player type situations here. These are players who you watch them and Pella, let's use Pella Larson for an example. Pella, first of all, take it for what it's worth, because I was wrong on Pella. But there are some issues, though, with Pella, because, again, Pella is limited. And I don't want to pick on Pella because there's a lot of players that were worse, but he's just kind of a perfect example here. Pella can get you 12 points, 4 or 5 rebounds, 2 or 3 assists, but he's never going to take over a game. That's just not who he is. That's just not in the cards for him, really. Now, I think when you look at him, though, he's a solid player. Courtney Ramey, let's use another example. And again, Doug Gottlieb has told me this multiple times before, where he says, there are no pros in the transfer portal. And he's exactly right about that. So you're going to get players that do have some flaws. Now, I do think that this is a squad that, you watch them and you need a next level player. Courtney Ramey has shown that. He's been enticing many, many times, because when you watch him, you're like, oh, all right, well, wow, that was easy. That looked a little bit different. But then he kind of goes back to being the same, dude. That's not what you really want. That's not what this team needs. You look at Kerr Kriisa. Again, Kerr Kriisa, he gets beat up a lot. I think probably pretty unfairly, mainly because, he's a lightning rod. He talks a lot. But I think what annoys a lot of people, though, is that, yes, while he talks a lot, he doesn't really, a lot of times he doesn't really back it up. He's not that good. Now, I think and then you look at some of the other guys. Umar Ballo. Love Umar Ballo, but Umar Ballo is not a star. Umar Ballo will never be a star. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But you're going to be somewhat limited. The only real star on this team is Azuolas Tubelis. I know, it feels weird to say, but again, Zoo struggled a little bit for sure at times, but Zoo's a star. If you drop 40, you're a star. But you lead the league in rebounds and touchdowns, rebounds and points. You're a really, really good player. There's a lot to like about you. But again, that's just one player. And then, you look at the other, you look across the roster, that's essentially it. So Tommy Lloyd has got to get more athletic, and he's got to not only get more athletic, he's got to get more dynamic. And what I mean by more dynamic is guys that you could get him the ball and you could basically say, all right, dude, get out of the way. We're about to score right here. I'm about to score right here. Arizona doesn't have really guys like that. At the beginning of the game, you saw how much easier it is when you do have somebody like that, though, because again, you had Azuolas Tubelis that was essentially scoring at will. It just makes everybody's life a lot easier. So what do you do about it? Well, first of all, for next year, I don't have any crystal balls, so I'm not going to sit here and make any guarantees. But it also would not surprise me, though, if a bunch of players came back to, if a bunch of players did come back to Arizona from this roster. I don't know how many. Who knows? Maybe everybody that can will come back. I don't know that. I'm not exactly sure on that one, but it wouldn't surprise me. Hint, 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 hint. Wouldn't surprise me. But you still, again, you got to address some issues. Now, first guy you got coming in, KJ Lewis. I'm a big fan of KJ Lewis. I think he's underrated. I think that people have been sleeping on him from day one. But I also don't think that he's going to come in and be Gilbert Arenas immediately, though, either. I think that he's going to, I think he's going to take a little bit of time. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. But I do think that he's going to take a little bit of time. Now, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this a little bit. Now, with KJ Lewis, he comes in. He can be a dynamic shooting guard. He can be a dynamic. He can be a dynamic playmaker. But again, he's going to take a little bit of time. I don't know where you're going to get that player. I don't know that there's a quick fix. Now, again, I think the thing that's also thing that's going to be interesting about this squad, though, is if you bring everybody back, can you win a title with this roster? This team has shown, because again, we can't be prisoners of the moment here. We can't be prisoners of the moment, but we also need to, talk about, does this team have it? Because again, they've played very well against good teams, and they play very well against very good teams. So there's that, but they also can play down. That shows you that there is a margin for error that this team doesn't own that maybe some other teams. And we were talking about it, and I think basically every Lute Olson team for about 20 years would knock this team out. Because they just have better athletes. They got to get better athletes. And I think if Tommy Lloyd got better athletes, they would be even better. But, it's going to take, I think the 2024 class is going to be that class. But again, that's going to take a little bit of time. So let's talk a little bit about 2024 then, and then we're going to work our way backwards. You got Jamari Phillips coming in. That's a great start. Top 35 shooting guard out of California. Good player. Probably a 2 or 3 year guy. Good athlete. Good. That's the kind you want, guys like Jamari Phillips in there. And then you're probably going to get Carter Bryant. Carter Bryant's one of the top 5 players in the country. 6'8", do-it-all wing. Got a little bit of Jason Tatum in it. Got a little bit of Jason Tatum in him. He can come in and he can be a difference maker athletically, lengthwise, skill-wise from day one. And I think with Arizona, the one thing that you got, though, is that you have to be able to get in there and get some raw run and jump athletes. If you can get some raw run and jump athletes, that makes things easier, because Tommy Lloyd's style is so good that I think all he needs is just a little bit of help on the perimeter from an athletic perspective, and I think things start to take off a little bit. But you got to get that. And again, talking about the heavy European influence, I'm totally cool with Euros. No problem bringing in Euros. But I think the one thing with Euros, though, is that you have no clue how they're going to develop. Let's take Henry Vasar, for example. I like Big Henry, one of the peaks. Big fan of Henry Vasar, but at the same time, though, he's going to take a little bit of time. You can certainly tell with Vasar that while he's good, he's raw. He's not a great athlete, and not only not a great athlete, he's just he's not a difference maker immediately. Tommy Lloyd needs guys that can come in and be 14-8, something like that, and be physical in the process. Because that's the other thing. You look at this team, and while they're skilled, and I think Tommy Lloyd has done a fantastic job with them, they're also, I don't know that they're the toughest team in the world. Like Kerr is kind of fake tough. Pella is physical, but I don't know that he's tough. Zoo isn't tough. I think Ballow's tough, but at the same time, I don't know. Ballow's got a ton of skill. So that kind of leaves you wanting there a little bit. So both of these things need to be addressed. Now, Lloyd, I will say this. First of all, Lloyd's A+ hire. I would hire him 10 days out of 10. I am a little surprised that he hasn't had a little bit more success on the recruiting front. I thought that he would do that. I thought that he would have some success there, and he just really hasn't. He just really, he hasn't been able to get him. Cody Williams is a perfect example. You should have been able to get Cody Williams, a kid that you prioritize out of Phoenix. You got to be able to get. You can't be losing that kid to Colorado. That's essentially never happened before. You can't let that happen. You just can't let that occur. But I think that he's also learning as a coach as things go. And that's what I like about Tommy Lloyd at the same time. I think that, he doesn't have all the answers. He knows that he doesn't have all the answers. So he's learning, and he's kind of learning, and, we're watching it in process. But you also got to remember, though, that he has the most wins in college basketball history over the first over his first 2 years. Now, one thing that we don't have to worry about, though, is Built Bar. You look at the big, strong players out there, you think to yourself, all right, Built Bar. Built Bar is where it's at. Built Bar is the strong. Built Bar is very, very good stuff. Built Bar is that's where you want. That's where you leave the gym and you say to yourself, man, I want to go. I don't want to get something pasty and chalky that tastes like deodorant. I want to get something that tastes good, something with protein. Check it out, Built Bar, very good stuff. And you can get it at your local GNC. The great John Schuster likes the blueberry. I like the blueberry as well. Either one of them, you can't go wrong. Check it out, Built Bar. All right, we're going to take a quick break with you. We're going to come right back, though, and then we're going to talk about what Arizona can count on these players on the roster going forward and what to be expected next year. Thanks for keeping it locked on, Wildcats. I'm your host, Mike Luke. All right, now, time to talk about a little bit about next year. Can any of these players make that jump? We've talked about it before, Julius Tabellas, for example. Made a huge jump. We've seen players under the Tommy gun make big jumps. Christian Coloco, Ben Matherin, in that first year under the Tommy gun. Then you've got a Julius Tabellas. You got a Julius Tabellas there as well. Big jump from year 2 to year 3. Can somebody make that? On this team, I guess let's just go player by player. I don't see it with Kerr Kriisa. I think with Kerr Kriisa, it is what it is at this point. Going to get you about 12 points, 5 assists, not going to shoot very well. And not only not going to shoot very well, he is a player who is, he's kind of limited. I don't know how far you're going to go with him as being one of your main guys. I think he can be a piece, but I don't think that he's going to ever be the player that you're going to go far with. And you know what? That's all right. That's not the worst thing in the world right there. But he is limited. I think we all know that. Pelle Larsson. Pella's interesting because again, my bad, Pella. I was wrong. I was wrong on Pella. Pella's much, much better than I thought he was. And so I'll certainly say that. But at the end of the day, though, I think it's also I think it's fair to say that he probably can't really handle the ball. And not only can he not handle the ball to a certain extent, he's a guy that he can get some baskets. He's enticing, but you're always kind of wanting a little bit more. And again, I think he's a little bit like that Kirk Kriisa, although I do think he has a higher upside than Kirk Kriisa. I think he could average 13, 14 a game, 5-6 assists, because again, he's a pretty good secondary facilitator, even though I don't like him dribbling more than 2 dribbles. We've been over this, Pella. So there's kind of that both. I think that's kind of the upside. Ballo, I think, is kind of what he is. And that's not a bad thing because again, Big Umar was 15-7. It's been 14-7 this year. He's been a good player. He's been, quite frankly, he's been better than anybody could have imagined. And anybody that said they wanted more out of Umar Ballo, I say poppycock. You didn't want more out of Umar Ballo. He's given you more than you expected out of Umar Ballo. So again, with Umar, but again, Umar is going to be limited because Umar doesn't have great hands and he's slow-footed and he's kind of just he's a plotter. And again, it's not I don't mean that necessarily in a negative light, but he's definitely a plotter. He's definitely got some issues that, that need to be addressed, or that I don't know that can be addressed, like so many of the guys on this team. With this squad, though, it's that's kind of where you're at. Kylan Boswell, though, is the one that I think could make that next leap to being a star. Kylan Boswell is a player who Kylan Boswell is a guy who is I think could be an all-conference player. He can get after the offensive player. He can on defense. He can make the three. Love seeing the three from him. Big fan of the three-point shot. Keep doing that, Kylan. And I think he's also a pretty good underrated facilitator as well. The Tommy Gunn talked about how coming into the year that he thought that Kylan Boswell could be one of the best players in school, or in best point guards in school history. I laughed at that. I still don't believe it, but every time you watch Boswell, he's a little bit better. He's a little bit better. He's a little bit better. And you start wondering. Now, if there's a place where you could bet on this, FanDuel is where you would bet on it. All right, check it out. FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, here's the deal with FanDuel. Great deals going on because you got to remember with FanDuel that your basketball season is in high gear. You got the playoffs coming up. You got and you got March Madness right around the corner. We're in March, in case you didn't know. And FanDuel is here to help you out. Again, live in-game props, you name it, they've got it. FanDuel Sportsbook, FanDuel.com/lockedoncollege. Check it out. All kinds of good stuff. All right, now we're going to talk about a couple of the players that I think a lot of people wonder what their futures are next. You're listening to Locked On Wildcats. Thanks for keeping it Locked On Wildcats. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now, let's talk about some of the guys. Adama Ball hasn't played this year very much. I like Adama Ball, but again, I would like Adama Ball to redshirt. I think that he's got some real potential, but I think it's going to take him a little bit of time. Nothing wrong with it. He's only 18 years old. Dylan Anderson, I'm a big fan of Dylan Anderson and Henry Vasar. I like both the peaks. The peaks to me are the two players that I think can grow the most this offseason. I think they're both going to be good. Again, not next level athlete types, but I think they're both going to be above average starting big men in the Pac-12. And it wouldn't surprise me if Big Henry is starting next year and Dylan Anderson is the first peak off the bench. Now, again, maybe Tabellas comes back, maybe he doesn't. At that pace, you'd have 4 peaks. But right now, I think you're looking at 3 or 4 peaks right there. But I like both of them. So those are kind of, now Philly B, I don't know what to expect out of Philly B. I do know that Tommy Lloyd likes him, but I think Philly B is going to take a little bit of time. Looks a little slow out there, but he's also very well put together for a guy that age. And I trust Tommy Lloyd with his evaluations of European players because, quite frankly, Tommy Lloyd deserves that when it comes to his evaluation of players. All right, now, coming up tomorrow, we're going to start getting you ready for the Pac-12 tournament because it's right around the corner. We'll be live and on assignment there at the Pac-12 tournament starting Thursday at 6 for the University of Arizona. But as always, appreciate you all. This is the time of the year, Wildcat fans. Again, Arizona's 25-6. That's good. That's not bad. So again, it's awesome. Remember, it's always is cool to be a Wildcat fan. We will be back with you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. You've been listening to Locked On Wildcats.